Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Phlox'em. Gonna be doing a little bit something different here. I might get into some gameplay, but I wanted to actually talk about something that I actually care about a lot in this game, and something that I was kind of reminded of this last week at locals. Um, One of the big complaints about the game from people who are coming from other card games is the lack of deck building. It is a very easy comparison to make. It's a very easy thing to kind of be passionate about too, because one of the things about deck building, and I've done a couple different games, different card games outside of this one where I was able to do that too, and so I kind of understand that standpoint. One of the things about it, probably one of the most important things that people are passionate about, is how building your own deck kind of makes it your own. It's this sort of personal pride, or just kind of care or love for this deck that you made. You know it, you kind of were creative and helped kind of craft all the little pieces and how it works together and the synergies and how you're going to kind of make it toolkitty, or just very single line, like one archetype kind of thing. um, and people say with Keyforge, you don't have that because you don't have control over the deck. You open it, and that's what you got, and you can't change it. You can't make it more synergistic or more archetypy or whatever. It's just what you have, and that is a very valid thing about this game. But and I know this is not the first time someone has talked about this. Some of the other podcasts have done a good job talking about it, but it is something that I care about a lot, because that is really something we all really want from these games. I think is we want to kind of be able to put our own personality into what we're doing. We want it to be kind of our own, and not just show that by winning, but also just by kind of like creativity and that ownership. And I think that argument really makes it so people don't see if the game actually has that or not. They kind of open one deck, it's not good, and they're like, well, I can't change this game is dumb. And I do know that that is a very possible first experience with the game, because there is that variance of opening decks. But I just want to kind of put a challenge out there that this game actually, to me, has scratched that itch in new and almost better ways. And you can see on screen, I have up here uh, my deck that I talked about in my first video, that I'm going to kind of use as a launch board for how it kind of scratches that itch, but in a different and better way. And so I want to take us back to a game that I didn't actually play this one specifically hardly at all, but to me, it really is the best example for what I think we all really want from a card game like this, and that's the TV show of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Um, and that's, anime show from, gosh, it's been out for a while now, but especially just the first season or whatever, there's just this super intense sense of this is my deck, and I'm putting my deck against your deck, and they're completely different. Mine is doing these things, yours is doing these things. They both have this personal connection to us. Um, and I trust my deck, and I know it, and I feel like it has this strategy and this personality, and I'm pitting that against your deck, which is, like I said, totally different. It's doing these other things, and it's very unique to you. I think when we see that as card game players, that is what we want. We want to be able to go into a tournament and just throw down this is me on the table, and I'm putting it against you on the table. And that is, I think, really at the core, or at least part of what we're really looking for when we're doing deck building in a different game, is we want to have this thing that is good, but it's also kind of almost an expression of us. And man, Keyforge does that different than any other game I've seen. And when I first started playing, that was actually the analogy I would use when I was teaching other people, is think about that first, even just that first duel that Yuki has with Kaiba or whatever. It's there are no bad cards in my grandpa's deck. And it's just kind of this the deck is, full of just all these kind of random, common, weird art that don't seem like they're doing a lot. Um, but he ends up winning with it. And it's, kind of this very he's showing off the uniqueness, but also the goodness of his deck, and he trusts in it, and all these things. And it's just like, I don't want to get into that too much because it's also very cheesy and kind of ridiculous because it's a TV show. But that was the analogy I use. Is like this game, the decks that you own, they are unique to you. No one else has that deck. Some of the ones you're going to open are going to be like so different from other people's decks that they even have like strategies or win conditions that few, if any, other decks have. And if they have that win condition, they probably still have one or two other different houses that make the deck feel completely different. And especially now that two things. One, we're 5 sets in, and every set is still viable for any kind of like tournament or competitive play. So the variety of decks that you see, and even just the lack of, to an extent, there are arguments about this, but the lack of, to an extent, any kind of actual meta, just means that that's really what people are doing when they go to these tournaments. Is they say, "This is my deck." So with this one, I sat down. I was like, "This is the slightly beefy Emir of Metropost, and it's gonna beat your deck that has this other name." And it plays this way, and that is completely different than how your deck plays or anyone else's deck here plays. And like that was just the experience I had, is that feeling of like, this is my deck, and like I know it, I've played it a ton, I trust what it's doing, I know its weaknesses, and I'm just gonna sit here and try and win with it because it's a deck that I love, and you know, it's unique to me, and so I'm gonna play it as though it's mine and unique. And that just really launched into just this kind of, yeah, that feeling of that this is really scratching that itch in a way that I didn't expect, but is crazy. So like what I look for more than anything else, because I'm not a super competitive player. I spent all day yesterday losing so many competitive games. Um, but what I keep coming back to is that I have decks that feel so unique to me that I just want to play them because I love them, and it's that discovery of those deck personalities, I think, is one of the most unique and fun parts of this game. That's the intro to what we're looking at today. Because what I really want to look at today is what makes, or at least one of the things that make a Keyforge deck unique. And to me, that is multiples. It's a very specific thing. I think rares can really do it too. The whole purpose of rares is that they're not necessarily like super good or super bad, but they just do this thing that kind of augments how the deck plays, and you can kind of play into it in a way that a lot of other decks that might have a lot of the same commons and uncommons can't do, just because you have that rare. I think rare artifacts especially can really do that. Something like I guess Obsidian Forge is just an uncommon. Eaton's Jar, or what is it? The Quixel Stone. I think that one is probably one of the most like iconic versions of that. Is it's this rare artifact that just warps the game so much, and you could have 11 out of 12 of the same Star Alliance cards, but as soon as that card is in the deck, it totally changes what the deck can do. It doesn't mean it's the best strategy for the deck, and that's where you have to play the deck, get to know it, see what it actually wants to do, but it's there, and it can really change things. So that's one of the things, but I think, to me, multiples are one of the things that really make things unique. And so we'll go back to this one first, and then we'll kind of get into some other examples. But you can see in this deck, there's the word Phlox'em in here 5 times. It's 2 different cards, but they have very, very similar effects and very similar limitations on them, in that they want you to have few cards or no creatures on the board. And if I just have one of these in the deck, it's a common card. There's tons of decks that have these cards in them. Carpet Phlox'em is common, this one's uncommon. So this card is everywhere. You open Carpet Phlox'em on almost like tons of AoA Mars decks. Very few of those play into any kind of strategy of using that. It might be kind of a holdover if your opponent like board wipes and then plays a bunch of creatures. You can hold that Carpet Phlox'em to then kind of retaliate. But that's really, most of the time, and even in most of my decks, this card is played as an Amber Pip. But in this deck, because there's so many of them, you're seeing that card consistently, and you start knowing it's coming, and whenever you have that kind of consistency, you start playing into that. You start kind of shaping how you play, what you do with the deck, so that those cards that you have a lot of start having an impact on the game more. And in this deck, again, just out of luck or whatever, the deck has a lot of synergy with that already. It's only got 13 creatures total, some of which I'm very happy to discard. Others are small enough, like Ronnie, that I can just destroy them with the Orbital Bombardment before I play a Phlox'em card. So I can actually, and I do this often, wipe my own board before I kind of have this huge push against my opponent's board, blowing up all their stuff or comboing with Mars Needs Amber to really kind of, play into these cards more. Other things like that are the Nature's Call. I can bounce my own creatures back to my hand to set up for a Carpet Phlox'em next turn. And so there's kind of that feeling of like, you have a lot of this card, and so you start really pushing into how to use those cards more when you have multiples of them. The Ronnie Race Clocks playing the same thing. I know I'm going to see Ronnie not just once in the game, but multiple times in the game. And so I kind of start seeing like, okay, are there ways I can force my opponent to go into 7 Amber instead of the 6? It's a little bit harder with this deck, except this deck it's fast. There are 17 Amber pips, so it's just going to be generating Amber pretty fast, so my opponent kind of has to keep up some tempo in order to just keep up with the deck in general. And when they start doing that, there's a much better chance they're going to go to 7, 8, so that those Ronnies get turned on. And if they don't, I have the Skeleton Key to maybe just take them off of 6 Amber so that they're not forging. So they have to make tough decisions against the deck just to be able to kind of keep up with it. All of that together, again, goes back to the fact that I'm seeing the same scenarios, I'm seeing the same cards multiple times in a playthrough, and so you start crafting your strategy with the deck around the fact that you're going to see those cards a lot. And so I think for Keyforge, that is where you really get a lot of the deck personality, is those cards that seem to kind of dominate what the deck wants to do. And if you're kind of doing that, that's really when you start seeing decks that become more unique. Like, I've never seen another deck that has 5 Phlox'em cards, and I've never seen a deck play as though it had 5 Phlox'em cards. And so this deck is very unique to me. Doesn't mean it wins all the time, but it's very fun, and it's just kind of that, it gives me that sense of like, this is my deck. I know it, it's mine, and like, it is me on a table, even though it's its own thing, because I just opened it and it was already there. But in that process of learning it, it became kind of like this extension of me in a deck. And that's, again, getting way too like philosophical or metaphysical about this. Really, it's just fun. I love discovering decks with multiples. Let's look at another example quick here. This is another just super fun deck. It can be really good in certain situations and really bad because it has literally no Amber control. But same kind of thing we're looking at is, let's start off with 3 Igors. So multiples, I know I'm going to see Igor a lot. I start, looking for the Igors and playing into their strategy of cycling the deck. And there are so many things that synergize with that in this. There's the Hysterias, so I can bounce the Igors back to my deck, but there's 2 Hysterias. So I play into a Hysteria-centered game where if my opponent is flooding the board, Hysteria is kind of my way out, and there's multiple of them, and I can kind of set up boards of my own side where Hysteria is only giving me back like play abilities, because there's a lot of play abilities in this deck, but I'm kind of giving my opponent back a bunch of random creatures. There's also the 3 regrowths, which can bring back, again, kind of that consistency thing where I'm seeing regrowth a lot, but I can also see a different card like Glimmer or Darna or Igors. I can see those a lot in a game too. And so I think we can get into recursion a little bit and how it makes your deck feel more unique, but I think just in general, like, there's 2 Exhumes, there's 2 Hysterias, there's 3 Igors, there's 3 Regrowths, there's 2 Darnas. All of those things just give this deck that unique feeling of like, I've never played against a deck that feels like this. I've played against decks that have 3 Igors before, because 3 Igors is really good. But comboing it with these other pieces, like, this deck just plays so uniquely, and that feels like it's, again, kind of that unique thing to me. And I just love that about the game. And I think, again, it just really it's one of the ways that your deck can have strong personality that scratches or even does a better job of scratching the itch of like having your own kind of thing. Now, this all kind of started or came back from, like, it came back to the front of my mind from what I opened on our local game on Thursday. Uh, so when I play sealed, I usually like to just play it totally blind. I'll pull the Archon card out and then just shuffle it and draw my first hand. And as I was playing through this deck, it was just crazy to me how many multiples there were. And so now we can look at it, like when I flipped the Archon card over, there was more than I even thought. The first thing you'd see is 4 Evil Eyes and 4 Inspectors. So in a 12 card this house, there are only 6 unique cards in that house. So that house is doing the same thing every single turn you play this. And I love that. It's like, it's kind of counterintuitive for a game that says like every deck is going to be unique and there's all these different cards and you're kind of getting a random mishmash of these cards. I think when you hear that, you think it's just going to be 12 different cards from that house in every deck. And like sometimes that's actually great. There are decks that really want that variety. There are things that kind of feed off that variety. But it is hard for that deck to really feel like it has a handhold on what it wants to do. Whereas a deck like this is like, it pretty much knows what it wants to do. Again, with that, you look at the Star Alliance, it's got 3 Walls, 2 Morpheus, and 2 Kincans, which 2 Morpheus, I've never really played with that before, and with a Ganger Chieftain, it's kind of ridiculous. You're just like throwing one creature into their battle line 3 times in a row. So that was pretty fun to discover. But this was just a really fun thing to open, and it's a deck that like I know I'm going to play a lot just because it has that feeling of like I want to play with a deck that is so consistent with even something as simple as Inspectors and Evil Eyes, and then all these like crazy small Star Alliance creatures. It's just gonna have that personality that I'm looking for in the game. And so I don't. Let's see. Yeah, we might just play a game now just to kind of get into seeing what this deck can do because I haven't actually played it since that night. But that's my little rant on one of the things I love about this game, and just kind of um, how it does really scratch that itch that a lot of people use as a argument against this game, and that there's no deck building. I think you can really get a sense of personality and uniqueness from decks that is as good or better than what you can build yourself. Because if you can build it yourself, someone else is going to build it. I dare you to find any other deck that has even 2 houses that look the same as this. And even if the 2 of them look the same as this, that third house could be one of 5 other houses or 4 other houses. So because of that, the deck could look completely different. And so I don't know. I love it about this game. It's something I'm super excited for. I think the new token mechanic, which I know I haven't done a whole lot about, the key forging um, or the Ghost Galaxy acquisition, I'm super excited about it. I think it's a fantastic thing for the game. Tons of people have already talked about it, but the token mechanic especially is just going to add this specific thing. It's going to add it to every deck, but it's also going to do it in such unique ways because there's so many different tokens you can get in a deck. In any given deck, despite or without even the rares that make your token a certain token, which it's going to be interesting to see how they do that if you get like 2 of those rares in one. Like what if you get a Blorb Hive and then whatever the Unfathomable one is, which one wins? Or if you have both? I don't know. Or maybe they just say you can't have 2 of those in one deck. I don't know. We'll see how they do it. But the fact that even without those rares, there are um, 9 possible tokens that your deck can end up with, and each of those will act like, if your deck has a lot of token generation, it'll act like a house like this, where you're just seeing, like, imagine instead of 4 inspectors, you're seeing like 7 inspectors in one game because you're just playing another token. You're playing another token. That will so much define the uniqueness and consistency of what your deck is doing. That I think the the personality of the decks we're going to see in set 6 are going to be just so much fun, especially with those rare ones like Blorb. I can't wait to see people just going so all in on Blorb Hive win condition. I think it's going to be so much fun. But there you go. That's my rant on uniqueness and just one of the things I love about the game. Again, I try to be competitive, but I'm just not super great at it. Even though in practice, I think I can actually do pretty well whenever I get into competitive setting. I don't do super well. I think mentally I just either go too fast or something. I just haven't had enough practice maybe, but I'm still going to keep playing even decks like this. So 56 ass, I think that's actually super underrated when you get consistency like this. Like the speed number is terrible. This deck is going to be so consistent that I think I might actually play it in competitive after a couple games. We'll see. Uh, but I just, yeah, it's something I'm always going to come back to in this game because decks feel like mine. They feel so unique to me, and I just kind of want to put myself out there on a table through these decks that I kind of have gotten to know. They're kind of like my friends or my army or whatever. That's another one that kind of like in old RTS games like the Lord of the Rings, oh, what was it? Battle for Middle Earth. In that one, you kind of wanted to create your own compositions of decks too, and it was just super fun to do that. Let's see. Let's go ahead and just drop Malice on, put some pressure on here. You want to make your own kind of army compositions. Like I'm just gonna make 50 spider riders and like just overwhelm the enemy with that because that like it's like my plan. It's what I want to do. I think they're cool. Like I just want to lean into that more. Let's see. This guy is not elusive. I think it's worth killing that there. So I'm just gonna go back into this, drop the inspector and Bornets. I think yeah, we'll just hit the opponents for now. I need to look at this deck and see if it's actually something. Ooh. Sorry, I know that's probably the fun part of the deck, but just can't have it. I'm going to hold on to one of these Evil Eyes, even though I know I'm going to see more. I lost my train of thought once I start playing. It's kind of all out the window. Yeah, I don't know. I love the uniqueness, and I'm always going to play decks like this. One thing I did want to talk about is, do I go back into this here? I can actually fight this off the board and steal one. Sure. This is very much a side note, but I feel like Malison gets a lot of bad rap. I love that card so much. I like Mars a lot, and I feel like Malison is a card that should have been in House Mars, or something like Stim Rager should have had more of a Malison ability, because like you look at, especially a card like Mars Needs Amber or whatever, Mars has so much leaned into that ability of your opponent's creatures capturing their own Amber, and like I don't know why they just randomly gave that to a disc creature. I don't mind it because I think the art is awesome. The fight ability is still pretty fun. It combos really well with Worlds Collide Brobnar, which not many things do, but if you're going to have Worlds Collide Brobnar, I'd love to have Malison in that deck for Ganger Chieftains and stuff like that because it just gives that extra passive steal. But I'm a fan of Malison. Really, a lot of the 5-power disc creatures I like. Let's see. After my next turn, maybe I'll. Oh, there they go. That was a lot of Brobnar. Okay. I don't think there's a reason not to go into Starlines here. I would have loved to have a Kincan so I could actually archive something, but let's see. Walls is not doing anything here, but Frayne gets to capture twice. I have very few decks with Morpheus, but man, card is gross. We'll put this on with the right combinations, and this is one of them where with the Ganger Chieftain. I had this at our when we were playing in person on Thursday. I think I'm trying to remember what Brobnar creature I had. It might have been the Mega Narp, but I had both Morpheus down, and then I played a Ganger Chieftain next to the Mega Narp after it had already fought once, and just like cleared their board because it just kept wanting to fight because of Morpheus. It's fun stuff. Problem here is that Groggins is bigger than anything I got, but I can archive it. God, this guy's so dirty. We're going to move to Kincan, and we're going to go ahead and pick up the Groggins. Let's see, does he have... He does have Ronnie. I'm just going to leave him. There's not really a need to play into that right now, especially since the Kincan can help me steal back stuff anyways, like... Oh. So that was actually a misplay on my part. So, there are no shadows on the board, so if he calls shadows here, I actually go to 7. Yeah. And now that actually activates his Ronnie, so I should have just gone to 8, so I'd be in check anyways. We'll see if he ends up having it. Oh, he's got the miasma. Darn. Yeah, so at this point, probably good to go to 8. I think I'm just going to play this Brobnar stuff. Do I want to go to 9? I think 9 is okay. So we'll play Guji, play Ganger Chieftain, who is going to ready and fight there, and then ready. And now I can reap with it. And then we're just going to dump this on Kincan to make him sticky. This is also my first deck with a Kincan's Blaster. With 2 Kincans and 3 walls, there's a very good chance I'm going to get that off. Interesting. That is... Sorry, side note. We played this on Thursday that Kincan's ability puts the creature in my archives, and that is not what happened here. I don't know if that's correct or not. Just gonna go utilize these evil eyes to kind of keep pushing. So I think that Grogan should be in mine, but I need to go check FAQ or something on that to see if that's actually what's supposed to happen. Because it just says to archive it. It doesn't say put it in its owner's archives. What does... Okay, so we're probably giving this one, because we don't have another Evil Eye. So we're just gonna do Star Alliance stuff. I really need to kill this thing. Just gonna drop him in ward. And drop her. That's Frayne's Blaster. And Frayne is gone, so that's unfortunate. Because we'll just put both of them on King Cannon. Just shoot this guy. Be done with it. So we're going back to 7 here, which again was probably a mistake, except I will steal again if they call shadows, because they haven't been able to keep shadows on the board. So hopefully it's still Forge. I was going to look up something, and I totally forgot. I think it was one of my other decks that does something. Oh well, we'll just keep going with this. So going into Brobnar. Barehanded doesn't really help them. They'd have to get a lot of creatures out for the Phlox'em. They might just Coward's End here. Which would hurt, but again, we have so many walls. We'll get these back. It would have been nice to put Neferu down there. This is a tough card to play with, but I think in this deck it's actually not bad because I want my Inspectors to die, and I have all these like little 2-power elusive creatures that my opponent really wants to destroy. And so this kind of acts like a deterrent to that. It's not great because they can just kill Nefru first, but if my opponent doesn't Coward's End here, I don't have burn the stockpile, right? Yeah. If they don't do that here, then I might just go into this, and then probably just run the Inspector into something, slow down their Logos. I'd love to wait on playing this until I have one more Ganger Chieftain. I guess I could fight with the Guji to activate the Alaka, but the Ganger Chieftain wouldn't be bad. This one's pretty good with Morpheus too. There's not a ton of playabilities in this. The Walls only has, there's only 2 upgrades in the deck, so if you get both of them in the discard and you only have 1 Walls with Morpheus out, it's pretty good, but Medic Ingram is a really good one to have Morpheus out for. Ward a couple creatures at once, and then the Ganger Chieftain are the main ones, but like I said, this one would be fun too, deal a lot of damage. EE is tough. I like my creatures too much, or my discards too much to purge them, but we'll see. There's not a lot of archiving, or there's really no archiving in this deck unless I use the Kincan's Blaster to do it. So setting up for a big EE turn is not a huge strategy of this deck from what I've seen so far. It's taking quite a while on this Brobnar turn. Wonder what's going on. They have so many cards in their hand. Is that just from memory chip? Okay, so yeah, there's the Coward's End. Weird. Let's just see what happens in a competitive game. Oh no. Why? Oh, I changed it by name. There we go. It's like switch to the other end of my decks. Yeah. This seems a lot more impressive, but we'll see what we can do. I really don't mind starting off with these. Do you have a... There's no ghostly hand, so don't mind just getting the 1 amber. Even though it will be stolen by this Umbra. So maybe I actually go Brobnar here. We'll wait for a Ganger Chieftain. If he wants to go back into Shadows, that's fine. There we go. Because even if he steals with Umbra, if he plays more creatures, I can probably get the Amber back with Malice on. The Brew is tough. I'd probably play it on Malice on, except they Scrambler Stormed me, so I don't get to play. Okay, we're going to do Brobnar anyways. I might just discard the Narp Brew. So we're going to do Ganger Chieftain on the right. And this is what I was talking about last game. Just the Ganger Chieftain with Malice on combo is really nice. Because now we can Alaka, fight, and then drop that. Got 3. I might actually hold this for next turn. Gotta decide about the Mega Narp though, if it's worth playing or not. I don't feel like this deck is reaping. Well, yeah, it kind of is, if I can stick with these guys on the board. Okay, so definitely want to go back into Brobnar here to clear out some of these. And see if we can get a little bit more. So we're going to do this on Calfine so that it can kill this Crump. But I think I just reap with the rest of these. And then, I think in a competitive game, I just discard this. We'll see if that was the right choice or not, but I really don't want to shut down my Star Alliance creatures. Good old bait and switch and routine job. Okay. We need to take them off check here because they do have the Titan mechanic. And I also want to deal with some of this shadow stuff. So we're going to go Dis. We're going to see if we can get that TMTP or the routine job. I think TMTP I can play around pretty easily. I don't think they have a ton of taxing. I can't kill anything with the Inspector, so we're just going to put this on Dodger because he wants to fight with Dodger anyways. We're going to throw that on the left there, which I probably... Oh, that was a misplay. I shouldn't have done that because the Evil Eye took him off check anyways, and now that would have put me in check, but I mean, they would deal with that, I think, anyways, so I'd rather just make this less of an option for them. Okay, Crump's back. There's a lot of Brobnar creatures. Holy cow. Just drew 4 Brobnar creatures. Okay, so probably fights off the Calphine here. Yep. And then can't fight and live except against the Inspector. That's fine. I still think Brobnar might be the play here. See if we can get one more Star Alliance card and kind of slow down their hand a little bit. So let's... Sequencing is unfortunate. We'll reap. And then we'll... I think just do this here so that it can't fight cleanly. We're pretty confident. Well, they could have the TMTP in hand, but that's fine if they want to go back into shadows. And we're going to stun here just to give them less optimal play. Okay, so no more Star Alliance, but I definitely need to get this stuff on the board, so... Going into Logos. They have a Graft? Yeah. And Scrambler Storm is fine. Wild Wormholes into Sound the Horns. Phase Shifts in another Crump. How many Crumps? 3 Crumps. That is just not good for this deck. I need to find that Volcano fast. Oh well. They're at a lot of Amber, and I don't have an Evil Eye, so not much I can do here. Just gonna spread these out. The only good thing for me is that he's got a lot of elusive to deal with. But this is a board state. I don't think I necessarily... I mean, I have a couple options. I just need to keep drawing through. Maybe I was a little bit slow on that to begin with. This is insane, though. It's just so many creatures. They're all going to unstun. Is the steal worth it here with E? Did some of those come in ready? I guess they were just from last turn. Oh, I think we need cycling more than anything here, so we're just going to drop this. I think we'll fight this in here. And this will actually reduce his Crump's abilities if I just toss all these, so We'll purge an inspector, and then we'll probably purge the mouse on at this point. Dang it. I really have to find that red alert or volcano. Is that what it is? Volcano? Yeah. I need to find those very quickly. Otherwise I just lose to this Brobnar board, which is probably going to happen this turn anyways, unfortunately. I can archive one at least. Okay, so we're going to play Kincan, him, and then play this guy, which means I do get back both of these blasters, which is very nice. Frains isn't doing much for me. We'll throw that on Walls, because that's probably the one they're least interested in killing right now. And then Kincan's is going to go on Kincan. And we're going to pick up just one of these crumps, which I think that's supposed to go to my archives. That's kind of frustrating. No! Oh no. This is how to have the answers and still lose. And we can stall him with the Evil Eyes, but I don't have a board clear in this, so at some point I'll have to call one of these other houses. Frain's gone, so we can't even capture. Man, yeah, that's just really unfortunate to have both board clears in the bottom 8. That's how it goes sometimes. Looks like I get to forge at least. And they are just on check, so I could actually go Star Alliance here and steal one. Is that better than cycling? Do I just pray I find one of these? I mean, I'm not going to stop a key in Brobnar either, so I guess I can hold this. Let's go back into Star Alliance. Play Frain on the right. Reap. Move Frain's Blaster. 2 Frain to steal 1. We can use Wall's ability to pick up Kincan's Blaster and put that on Walls. I mean, the deck is doing stuff. There we go. Still no board clear. Both in the bottom 6. But man, they have to get to 13 amber or 12 amber to forge a key here. Which, of course, they just go back into Brobnar, so. Yeah, that's just so frustrating. Actually fights this time with the Crump. Alright, well, let's just keep the stall game going. There's no point in holding the other Evil Eye because if I go back into Dis, I'm losing anyways. There's one of them. Oh my goodness. This is just so bad. Well, does Logos have a... Scrambler Storm. Can't do it anyways. Yeah, I mean, it's a loss all around, so it doesn't really matter. Good game, though. That could have gone different. I think this deck actually has some decent speed to keep up with this, but 2 Scrambler Storms is tough to play around for sure. Well, there you go. But anyways, I mean, you can even see, just as we're going through that, somehow the Evil Eyes and Inspectors actually don't seem like they are doing stuff, but the Ganger Chieftains and then the walls with those two upgrades, at least in that game, that's really what we saw happening the most, is just how those were kind of, um, I think the recursion especially. Recursion is a really big thing for kind of seeing the same cards multiple times. Um, can really add to that personality. But I mean, yeah, I think this might also just be a practice thing. I love Inspector. I think it's just one of my favorite commons. I don't really know why. Probably just because it's random purging. Like the difference between how much I like Inspector and how much I dislike Infernus is crazy. Like this one just seems fair. It's kind of just this nicely designed creature where your opponent doesn't really want to kill it, but if they leave it, you get to reap with it, and like you can capture Amber on it and stuff. But whatever it purges, like it's random, so it could be like a game-winning purge, but it just kind of creates that added disruption. So I really like this card. The Evil Eye is not something I'm super in love with. This is another thing I think about a lot, just the value difference between taxing for +2 and taxing for +3. I think most of the time I actually prefer taxing for +2 because that's the one that you're most often going to destroy Amber with. Whereas the Evil Eyes, especially you saw in that game, I exclusively played it to stop my opponent from forging, and that is good and necessary sometimes, but being able to blow up that extra Amber is so much more valuable in a lot of games that I almost wonder if both of this and Lash of Broken Dreams. I think Lash has more things to combo with it in like Call of the Archons, especially just with the TMTP and interdimensional graft and stuff that you really want to push them to those high numbers. But in a deck like this, I think if these were keys cost +2 instead of +3, I honestly think the deck would be better. And that might be a hot take if anyone wants to argue that. But you think about a card like Garcia. I use Garcia to tax for +2 so often, whereas actually getting someone to where their key, like they're spending 9 amber on a key, is so rare. And especially if I have this many, like maybe with this many, I just keep playing them turn after turn. But if I'm not seeing some of these other cards, then I'm not going into this a lot. Like Star Alliance and Brobnar are way more the main houses. This is just adding some disruption and some amber control. Like even there, you saw I discarded the Inspectors for the EE because it was just a better play. You want to be calling these two houses a lot more, and so I think the Evil Eyes just have a hard time really being the focus of the deck, even though they're in there. And I think if you see them just as a support card, they're actually really good. But I don't think, again, I'm going to use them multiple turns in a row to really make my opponent's keys, make my opponent pay the extra 3 amber for a key. It's more going to be like I can race next turn with Star Alliance, so I'm just going to hold them off forging this turn with a dis, then go back into Star Alliance and, do all that blaster stuff. But cool. I know there's a longer video. Hope y'all made it through. And if you guys have like those decks that just feel like your Yu-Gi-Oh deck, definitely let me know. I love that about this game so much, and it's something I really wanted to share, especially after opening this one, just kind of really fresh on my mind again. So let me know your thoughts. Again, sorry about the audio. I'm hoping to start budgeting for some upgrades to this soon. This is just what I get to do right now. So yeah, we'll be back with more hopefully soon. Thanks for watching.